now. So with more and more organisations expecting mentoring to achieve strategic outcomes, it's never been more important to make sure you get it right. Why does mentoring fizzle out? Organisers leave, funds dry up, priorities change, people become too busy. There's a host of reasons. Well, today I'm going to talk about 18 things you need to do well to ensure mentoring works. Yes, 18, so we'll be going fast. And I'm going to invite you to assess your current mentoring strategy or your planned mentoring strategy against these best practice benchmarks. So this webinar is a bit different from others that I've run in that there's a lot of work for you to do as we go, but I promise it will be well worth it because you'll discover the strengths and areas to build on for your mentoring program. So just a reminder, there is a handout for this webinar we'll use. It's got the 18 questions on it. If you haven't got it, download it now, print it out. If you can't do that, don't worry. Just take some notes. You can put just on a blank sheet of paper, numbers 1 to 18, and there's a rating scale for each. So you'll still be able to do the self-assessment and then pick up the actual questions a bit later so you can come back to those. So, in case you don't know me, I'm Anne Rolfe, and I have a background in adult learning, career counselling and professional development. I've been in business for 30 years, and over the last 2 decades, I've specialised in mentoring programs. I've spoken in lots of places, Canada, China, US, as well as here in Australia, the Philippines, etc. And I do speak from mainly a corporate perspective, but I've also worked with not-for-profits, academic organisations and government agencies. So know that everything I'm going to share with you today can translate to your particular situation. So you can certainly translate that for yourself or ask questions if you want to. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be going through 18 questions as well as I'll be giving you information along the way. The idea is, and if you've got that handout, you'll have the questions in front of you. If not, just write the numbers 1 to 18 on a sheet of paper. And then we're going to give a rating for each of these questions. So keep score as we go along. Take your best guess if you're unsure of which rating you want to give yourself. Just take a guess. It's okay. This will be completely anonymous. Only you will know the answers or your ratings, although I will run a poll at the end that'll give you a bit of a benchmark to go against. And make sure you do write notes for yourself and have fun with this. It's meant to be a bit of a fun thing as well. So many of you will have seen this slide before. It's the one that I always come back to in these webinars about mentoring strategy and designing your mentoring program. Again, don't worry, there's a lot of detail. It'll be too small for you to see on the screen, but I have put this there as a handout for you too. You can download it now if you've got a printer and you can do that download. You can do that now if you want to, but you don't need to. I will send this to you afterwards with the questionnaire in case you couldn't download that. The other thing is this handout and a number of other templates and really useful guides are on my website. And if you go to my website, look for the drop-down menu headed up resources, drop that down and go to mentoring strategy. And on that web page, you're going to find a lot of really useful stuff there, absolutely free, with my compliments. So this is the model that I call the 4 Ps. So we talk about planning mentoring, promoting mentoring, preparing the participants, and the program of support. Now, the questions are actually grouped in those 4 categories too, so that at the end, you're going to see where your strengths are with your program. Is it in the planning that you've done? Is it in your promotion, your communication strategy? Is it in the preparation you do, the training for participants? Or is it in your program support, or none of the above? So you'll be able to kind of look at where are your strengths and where are the areas that perhaps you need to ramp up a bit. So I'm going to cover the 6 points under planning mentoring, and then I'll pause for questions about those. Again, don't have to wait. You can type in your questions at any time, or comments, or if you want to have input. And if you've got a microphone and you want to actually speak, or a fairly small group on the line today, you can actually put your hand up, and if you'd like to, I can come and open up your microphone and you can speak, and the rest of us will hear you, and it will be on the recording as well. You don't have to do that. You can type in. Also, if you want to type something in and share it, but do that anonymously, type the letters ANON before your comment or question, and I'll see that. I'll know who's saying it, but I won't mention your name. I'll just share what you've written, but keep it I'll respect your privacy. So we've got a lot to cover in less than an hour. So let me get going on this. So number one, the first place we start with designing a mentoring strategy is actually to identify strategic objectives. Now, I know I'm preaching to the converted on this kind of webinar about the benefits of mentoring, and we often come to this from the perspective of the people who are going to be mentored. What's in it for them? We're trying to help them. We're trying to assist them. We're trying to move them from some place that they are to some place that they want to be. And we think mentoring's the way to go to do that. But I'm asking you in this kind of thing to take a step back. Most of you will represent some kind of organisation, whether it's a not-for-profit, a for-profit, a government agency, an educational institution, whatever. You are still there as a representative of an organisation. And so I want you to kind of take a look at the bigger picture. And again, here's a model some of you will have seen before. So looking at mentoring from the highest level, we start from the organisational perspective as we look at the aims. What are the organisational needs? What is the strategic value that you believe mentoring offers from an organisation perspective? This is the kind of the why of mentoring from the organisation's point of view. And I suggest that you look at that as well as where you probably most want to come from, which is the next level down, the level I've labelled focus. So your target group, as I said, the group you really want to help and assist, the group you think needs mentoring, and look at the purpose for them. So we've got those three levels, and then we can drop it down. And the specify objectives that I'm now talking about is after we've looked at organisational needs and strategic value, after we've identified our target group and the purpose that we are trying to fulfil, we then look at outcomes that we can measure, or in other words, objectives for our mentoring program. So question number one, if you've got the handout, great, you've got the question there. If you haven't got the handout, you can jot this down or simply write the number one and the rating scale for this. So let me tell you how the rating works. You rate yourself a 0 if you don't have objectives that are clearly linked to organisational needs. So that's a 0. And please know that you're not alone if this is the case. Many, many mentoring initiatives don't do this. It can become a problem, however, and it can lead to funds and enthusiasm for mentoring drying up. So you get a score of 2 only if you have your mentoring strategy has very clear and measurable objectives linked to important organisational outcomes. And you score a 1 if you're somewhere in between. Your best guess on this is fine for now, just so you have a number for now. Okay, if you've got a question, let me just check the questions now and see if there's any questions or comments here. Okay, you don't have to tell me. Okay, thanks, David. You can, but I'm not going to share that. This is for you. Okay, on your worksheet. This is your self-assessment. I'll gather your input in some polls later on so that you can see where your responses kind of fall. So hoping everyone has got your rating. Is it a 0? So no, we haven't done this activity. We haven't done the linking. And as I said, many programs don't do this. And I'm just forewarning you, there are some challenges down the road if you don't. And it's fine to go back retrospectively and do this. I'm just highlighting it as a potential area to work on. A 2 says, yes, we did our homework. We've got those very clear links. We've got it documented. We've got very clear objectives for the program that link into the mission, if you like, and the vision of the organisation we are part of. Or 1 is somewhere in between. Not too sure about that. Okay, let's go on. Number 2 is how well have you actually analysed the needs that are able to be addressed by mentoring? Now, to score a 2 here, you need to have some reason to believe that mentoring will make a difference. As I said, often we have a problem with this because I am preaching to the converted. You are believers in mentoring. You've probably seen the terrific outcomes that mentoring can gain. Also, I have to tell you that mentoring is kind of a buzzword, and because of that, it kind of tends to be regarded as a bit of a magic bullet, a silver bullet. It's going to fix everything. It's the panacea to fix all ills. And I'm here to tell you it is not. Mentoring is terrific, but it has limitations. And the number of times I've done a needs analysis and pulled out aspects, so things that stand between our target group and the outcomes that we are looking for, there are things that stand between them and that mentoring cannot fix. And we need to know that because we're going to make some claims. We're going to, be looking for outcomes from mentoring, but you need to be realistic about that. And the thing that allows you to do that is a needs analysis. And Gary, I know someone like you with your background and the knowledge of your target group, you'd be really clear about what mentoring can do and what it can't do. And I know, and you don't have to comment if you don't want to, but if you do, if you're happy to share, please feel free. And anyone else who's on the line as well. But I'm thinking, Gary, of our conversation, and I know that you have put in place things other than mentoring that will actually support your target group, in recognition that mentoring alone is not enough. So you do need also a lot of workplace programs, which are the sort of things that I often deal with. I often survey the target group and talk to them about what they need. And it might be retention, for example. So a lot of organisational programs, corporate programs, are aimed at retention of their graduates, for example, or they want to retain women in their organisation in a male-dominated field, or maybe they're losing their new starts. So retention is something that is good to really look at, and you need to know why you are losing people before you can decide, is mentoring going to help that, or do we need to do some other things? So let's rate this. Again, you don't have to let me know. This is for yourself, but do make sure you're keeping score here, just for yourself. You rate a 0 if you've not done a needs analysis. And once again, I'm letting you know that you wouldn't be alone. Lots of people jump into their mentoring programs not having gone out to their target group, not having done kind of the organisational assessment or other processes to analyse the real needs. And so don't feel bad about that. It's not unusual. But be honest with yourself. If you haven't done that, give it a 0. However, you can give yourself a 2 if you're very confident that you have accurately identified the needs and you know that mentoring will make a difference. And one is, well, we've had a bit of a look and we think mentoring will help. Okay. Gary, hoping that I can share this. Just read it first. Okay, Gary, I hope this is okay for me to share. Gary's saying we are supposing that mentoring will form between 35 and 50% of the support we offer clients. So my assertion was pretty much on the money. Gary's done his homework. He knows his target group really well. He knows the problems, and he recognises 35 to 50% of what will make a difference will be the mentoring, but that leaves that other, somewhere between, what is it going to be, 50 and 75, 80% is, 75% is going to be the other things that are part of Gary's program there. Okay, so have you all done your rating on number 2? Let's move on to number 3. Keep score as we go along. So number 3 is engaging the stakeholders in the planning process. So again, this is one that a lot of organisations skip. Getting the stakeholders engaged. I feel the best way to start is with a planning workshop. That's what I like to do. And I like to bring people together to discuss what's required. You need your senior decision makers on board so that they understand what's really involved and are willing to allocate resources. And the most common comment I get from senior managers at a planning workshop, I didn't realise there's a lot more to this than I thought. Because once you start getting into the planning from a strategic point of view, some people still think, we put this person with that person, doesn't cost a lot, you don't have to put a lot of thought into it, just match them up and away they go. No. I have to boast politely here because 100% of my clients that engaged in a planning workshop agree that it's time and money well spent. But it's not just the senior people who should be involved in the planning. Your mid-managers can easily derail your program. So get some mid-level leaders involved at the planning stage and listen to their concerns and suggestions. So in an academic setting, you've got your decision makers, but you may also have other people that could have an influence. They're not directly involved in the program, but them being on board or not could make a difference. So maybe you want to include them in the planning process. In fact, anyone you think might have a concern. I was involved in planning a program a few years ago, and it was outside of the HR learning and development area. And we knew that HR, L&D could get their noses out of joint about some other part of the organisation taking the lead on this program. So strategically, we got them involved on the steering committee. We got them involved in the planning process. We paid particular attention to, and we made sure we listened to their concerns and were very respectful of them, kept them in the loop, kept them involved, followed their guidance, and that way warded off this potential. And look, I'll be honest, it was political manoeuvring, but by getting them inside the tent, so to speak, they really had valuable insights and input and legitimate concerns which we might have overlooked had they not been there. So do yourself a favour and get people involved. So and also think about having some of your intended mentors and mentorees or mentees involved as well to get their input. After all, you're designing something for them. You wouldn't, if you were going to get a tailor-made suit, you wouldn't send someone else to get measured up for it. You'd go yourself, wouldn't you? So you might like to get them involved. So let's do the rating. So 0 means that your program was planned in isolation. Now, we all have good intentions. We might have terrific knowledge and background, and I tell you, this is often what happens. Heads get together and put the program. So again, you're not alone if you're doing a 0 here. However, 2 is, you got those key stakeholders involved. Now, you might have had a planning workshop. Maybe you interviewed them, maybe you talked to them, maybe you did a questionnaire. I don't know what. All sorts of things might have been done to get their input, but you got them involved and in the planning. One somewhere in between. You went and had a chat with a few people. You've got a good take on it. You've got finger on the pulse in your own ways. So 0, 1 or 2. Where are you going to rate yourself? No one's going to see this. This is just your self-assessment here. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, now determining your evaluation. A lot of people leave evaluation to the end, and some evaluation may happen at the end, but I'm going to suggest to you, in fact, recommend to you, you'll get a much better result if you determine your evaluation criteria up front in the planning phase. Now remember what I said at the front, it's not too late retrospectively to go back and change any of this. You might have been running your programs. I know a lot of people are already running their programs. It's not too late to kind of retrospectively go back and do some of these things. That's the whole point of this webinar. So you can make your mentoring better. You'll see where do we need to ramp up our efforts? Where could we, maybe streamline or review what we're doing now and make it better? So evaluation criteria. Plan from the outset. And if you've identified those strategic objectives in question 1, you're halfway there with this one because you already have the overall aim of mentoring and how you measure it. You should use your planning team to brainstorm as many success indicators as you can and identify which ones you can quantify for before and after comparisons. Your evaluation might include group reviews, personal interviews, or questionnaire. So, how well are you doing on this one? So, give it a 0, give it a 1, or give it 2. How well have you determined your evaluation criteria? So you've got definite things you can measure, quantifiable things ideally. Before and after measures are terrific, although remembering, and if you were on my evaluation webinar earlier in the year, evaluation can include quantitative and qualitative, and there are some ways you can kind of make qualitative things a bit more quantifiable, put some numbers around those. But have you got evaluation criteria? 0, no we don't. 2, yes we have, and we know exactly how we're going to measure it. 1, somewhere in between. Okay, I will pause for questions shortly. Don't have to wait. You can start typing them in now. I hope you can let me know how you're going with your ratings if you want to. I'm hoping you're keeping score there as we go. So here's number 5. It's really important to document your plan. So we're still in our first P of the 4 Ps. In that model we looked at before, and this is all about planning, and it's really important to document a blueprint. I can't tell you how many programs I've seen fall over because someone left the organisation. This is one of the reasons mentoring fizzles out. Someone set up a program, they ran it, maybe ran it for some time, and then they left the organisation and went somewhere else. There was nothing documented on that plan, and so all the knowledge went out the door with them, and there was no one to pick up there's nothing to pick up, there was no one to pick it up, or they struggled, or it's too much of an investment to start from scratch again. So document your plan. This allows you to have something to go back to review, to revamp, and to hand on, and also to delegate. You don't want to get caught up in running every single part of your program all the time. Most of us have other jobs that we get paid for, so it's a good idea to have that documented and be able to delegate or see what you can automate as well. So not only that, but decision makers want a project plan, and activities need to be scheduled and allocated. Your blueprint records all of the things we've covered so far, plus the details of the 11 activities we've yet to cover. Well, it's more than 11 actually. It's number 5 on our list, but I'm going to come back to it when we've looked at everything else so you can rate it more accurately. So it's number 5. Don't rate it yet. I'll give you a chance to come back to this one and give yourself a rating when you see how much else is involved. So let's go on to number 6. Okay, speaking of delegation. The last point in the planning process is you need a person or a team who has the delegated authority as well as the responsibility to coordinate and manage the program. to implement that plan. And as a consultant, I often help to plan and set up the mentoring strategy, but you still need an in-house person or team that is there as the go-to person for participants. He or she organises events, venues, resources, and monitors progress and reports results. Sometimes I support that person or team, but they must be assigned enough time to do the job properly. So we are going to rate this one. 0 means you don't have a coordinator. 1 might be you've got someone designated, but it's an add-on to their job with no extra time allocation, and this makes me cross. Mentoring is an important project and needs to be treated like a project. In other words, allocated time, resources, and people. And 2, yes, you've got a person with responsibility, the authority, and an adequate amount of time dedicated to this role. Okay, hoping you've all rated now. I will pause for any questions, comments. There we go. We've got, we're into the planning. So just looking at the planning aspects now. We've now covered all those points. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, I see someone else is just joining us now, so welcome. As you are just joining us, we are still in the process of our self-assessment. Okay, so I don't see any questions or comments. If you're typing, keep typing, and I'll come back. I'm going to do a few more points and then come back and pause for questions again. We're going to move into the promote mentoring. There are just 4 questions related to that. Then we'll come back to prepare, and we'll move on to program support. And we'll rate all of those as we go through. So, okay, come on, slide. I'd like you to move on now to our next slide. Okay, good. So number 7. Once you've planned a mentoring strategy, you do need to promote it. And some people have a little bit of difficulty with the idea of promotion and marketing, but that's what it really is. You are selling the concept of mentoring, the program itself, the value. You can call it a communication strategy if you prefer, and often organisations do that. So you need to realise that although most people agree that mentoring is a good idea, not everybody will be instantly committed to giving it priority over conflicting demands. Depending on your resources, communication could include things like management briefings, staff information sessions, posters, brochures, information kits, an intranet page, online audio visuals, presentations that communicate the value of mentoring. Your promotion of mentoring must not be confined to pre-launch. You need to have an ongoing communication strategy. I've just put a few examples up on your screen now. You need a steady stream of communication throughout your program. You need to keep those senior and mid-management involved in high-level messages and reinforcing the strategic value. Your supervisors of participants must be kept in the loop too, and participants themselves need regular contact and two-way flow of communication to feel supported. Sometimes non-participants need to know that their development is not being ignored as well. So here's your rating coming up. So how well have you communicated the strategic value? Do you have an ongoing strategic communication strategy? Is it 0, 1 or 2 that you're going to rate yourself on that? Okay. Communication, promoting your program. How well are you doing? 0, 1 or 2. Okay, number 8 then. Now, you need to notice there's 2 parts to question 8, attracting and engaging mentors and mentorees, or mentees if you prefer. In other words, recruiting them and maintaining their enthusiasm. If you've done number 7 well, so if you've got a great communication strategy happening with continuous messages before, during and after they start, then you're going to be theoretically doing 8 quite well, unless there are obstacles in your way. And I know many times there are problems recruiting mentors, and sometimes it's hard to get mentorees to join. So you wouldn't be alone if this was a challenge for you. We did a whole webinar on recruiting mentors earlier, and the recording and the ebook is available. I'll tell you how to get that at the end. So go ahead now, and this is just a rating. Once again, how well have you done? So a 0, not doing so well, we're struggling here. It's always a struggle for us to recruit them and keep them involved. Or 2, yeah, we do it really well. We've got them queuing up at the door. We've got a wait list to be on our program. So we know we're doing well, and we don't lose them during the program. They stay with us right to the end. Or a 1, somewhere in between. Okay, while you're rating, I'm just going to look at a question. Okay, Gary, thanks for sharing this. This is really important. So thanks for sharing your experience, Gary. And anyone else, please feel free to chip in. It's not just questions here. It's if you've got something to share with your colleagues. Gary says, I'm planning 10 touch points every year for networking, the above, monthly reports. Do you think that is enough? Yeah, if that's, I'm assuming that's a 12-month plan, 10 touch points would be good. But remember, to mix up your media, Gary. So you want to have a mix. So you could have more than 10. You could have 10, maybe you're going to have 10 face-to-face, so networking events that people come along to, or you might have a few webinars where you get everyone online together. Or you might have a newsletter that goes out excuse me, once a month, or you might have phone follow-up. So you might have a whole range of things. Gary, if you whiz me an email, I can talk you through or I might have showed it on the last webinar, I can't remember, but I actually showed a spreadsheet that I drew up when I was working with a client, and I drew up with a client looking at mixed media and the many, many different touch points that we would have. So we had emails going out on a regular basis. We had mentoring tips going out. We had a newsletter. We had face-to-face. We had coordinators who made telephone contact. So there's a whole range of things that you can do. So it depends. So 10 may be enough if you're doing 10 in different mixed media. Okay, so looking forward to finding out how we're going with this in some polls on one at the end. So where are we up to? Moving on to point 9. So I have kind of mentioned this one a little bit before, but it's so often overlooked. And if you feel like this one seems to relate to a corporate perspective, but you need to do the mental translation of this to your own situation. Who are those people that if you don't keep them in the loop could actually derail? Or it mightn't be people, it might be things. So do that translation. If you've got an example to share, please type that in. So gaining the support of managers. You might have, for example, really enthusiastic participants, and you might have that classic support from the top, but look out if you haven't got the managers on board. I've heard participants tell me too many times that their managers make it difficult for them to take time out for mentoring, or they feel guilty about it. You want managers to actively encourage their people to participate and maintain their commitment. So some of the ways you might gain their support. So visible support from the CEO. So the CEO has signed off on this, they're for it, but is their support ongoing and visible? Are they talking about it? Is their communication coming up? Is it part of executive meetings, for example? If you can't get the CEO to run around for you, what about some high-level champions? Now, these might be people who may or may not be directly involved. Maybe they don't have time to be mentors, but they can be champions. They can be out there talking up the program, selling the program, supporting people, visible, being visible. Okay, one of the things you might do if you're in a corporate is to have an application form for both mentors and mentees that managers actually sign off. So they get some information, they understand what's going to be involved in terms of the time commitment, and they sign off on it before their person is involved in the program itself. I do recommend some sort of management briefings. So either live face-to-face stuff, maybe if you can get the CEO or your champions to deliver this or to be a guest or at least introduce you as you speak, that's great. You may not be able to do this live. You can do this as webinars. You can do it as recorded little audio visuals. You can do it as written, whatever you want, or you might do, again, mix it up and have multiple media communications on this. So if they don't get to the live one, they see the recording. If they, the CEO sends out a letter, even if it's one you've written, over their signature, and they're okay with that, but something needs to go out to inform anyone who might have a direct or indirect. You might have personal meetings with these managers. So whether that's bumping into them in the corridor, in the lunchroom, or deliberately going out to see them to get them on side, to get their input. Again, if you've done that stakeholder involvement, you've got a foot in the right direction. Doing this all up front at the front end is great, but you must keep on with it as, again, part of your communication strategy, keeping people in the loop. And here's a secret. You might get them mentors. There's nothing that sells mentoring like people who have their own mentors and understand what they can actually get from the process. And also, you might get them involved as mentors, mentoring other people. So there's some of the ways you might get involved. So let's do a rating. How well have you done this? So if you've actively engaged them and they're really on board, that's a score of 2. If you haven't included them in your plan, you haven't talked to them, that's going to be a 0. If you're somewhere in between, we'll give it a 1. Okay, and if you're translating this to some other factor or, that you need to include, having given this some thought, it's not getting support of managers, you can cross this out, and it might be some other aspect that could derail your program that you need to work on. Well, write that in, and you could share that with us if you've translated this to something else for your situation. I'm going to pause now again and have a look and see if there are any questions coming in. I am running just a little bit behind time, but I'll endeavour to get through most of this by 12 o'clock for you in case you have to leave. And I will hang around for as long as need be to answer any questions. So I'm not seeing any at the moment, but feel free to type them in. Again, there's our model we're working from. That is a handout that you can download now or later, and I will make contact afterwards and send these handouts for you, the questionnaire as well, in case you need it. So in this next section, then we're looking at preparing participants for mentoring. We talked about attracting participants, but not everyone is suitable to be a mentor or indeed to be mentored. So just like if you were recruiting staff, you need to have some selection criteria. Not just anyone gets in, selection criteria. So what qualities do you think you want in your mentors? And likewise, think carefully about the eligibility of those you want mentored and choose candidates most likely to succeed in achieving the goals of mentoring. And Gary, again, I got a feeling we talked about this when we met, especially for a pilot program or your first program. Your first program, you want to have success so that you can point it and it will be easier to market this program down the track. So choose your participants carefully. Choose people that are going to commit to this and that are most likely to be able to get the results you want. So screen them. Again, just as if you were hiring someone for an important job. This is an important job. job, whether it's a mentor or a mentoree. So screen them, choose the ones. You can put the others on a wait list. You can maybe support them in some other way, but you want the best people you can, especially for an early program. So in terms of matching, now, if you've got a small program, probably up to about 20, you can probably do this manually. So yourself, the coordinator or the team, making matches based on predetermined criteria. Often the needs and the goals of the mentoree that they list on their application form are aligned with the experience and the interest of a mentor. You might be able to give the participants some choice in this, depending on what your situation is. Sometimes I run a fun activity called speed dating. I've seen that work quite well, and gather the input from the participants about their preferred match. And sometimes it's just the profiles are made available online, so mentees can actually choose them. If you've got a large program or a growing program, you may eventually have to go to some sort of software system, and there are plenty out there that actually help you match your participants automatically or in a more automated fashion. So rating time again, give yourself a rating. So a score of 0 means, oops, don't have a plan for matching them, haven't quite thought that one out. 2 means you are very satisfied that matching is done well for your program if it's already running, or in your planned program, you've got a good plan, you know that's going to work out. 1 is somewhere in between. Okay, rating yourself there. Typing in any questions you have as we go. I'll pause again in a moment, but we're going to move on quickly to number 11. I will be talking about training in a minute, but right from the get-go, people need information, guidelines, and resources. I mentioned before you might run face-to-face information sessions, briefings for managers, information sessions for potential participants. You might do this as webinars, or you might produce videos that enable people to make informed decisions about getting involved. Your resources might include written guidelines, audio visuals, books, FAQs, frequently asked questions. You might have a mentoring code, some kind of reference material to help them stay on track. And you probably are going to provide a lot of this online, but it might be available for them to download and have in hard copy as well. I suggest this sort of thing is something you can make available to all staff, not just people involved in your program. So, you know, if you've got a limited program, but you've got other people who want to be mentored, they can make use of the resources and go and find their own mentors. Or maybe you've got a way of helping them link up with mentors, not part of the program, but more of an informal thing that they can go on with. So rate yourself on number 11. Information, guidelines, and resources, perhaps before they even sign up. 0 means you don't have any. 2 means you've got a comprehensive range. And 1 is somewhere in between. So go ahead and give yourself a rating for number 11. We're going to take a look at number 12. So moving on fairly quickly to number 12. So this is just another version of a diagram you've seen before. This is kind of looking at it a slightly different way, because the most obvious aspect of preparing people for mentoring is the training and the education. But education really begins as you promote the program and the mentoring strategy. It is critical once you match mentors and mentorees and continues as part of your program of support. It's good to provide a workshop each for mentors and mentorees. That's my preferred model, doing that separately, and then bring them together to get off to a good start. Follow-up sessions are a feature of best practice programs. If it's not feasible to get people together regularly, webinars can be very effectively. Now, every reference you'll ever read on mentoring best practice is emphatic. Training is critical to success. and training for mentors as well as those who are going to be mentored. They need education if mentoring is going to be successful. People have very different ideas about what mentoring is and how to go about it. If their roles and expectations are not made explicit, and if you don't give them a framework for the kind of mentoring that will achieve the outcomes you're aiming for, then you risk failure and the mentoring fizzling out. The best reason to train mentors is that although people understand intellectually the value of mentoring, they don't know its real power until they experience an actual mentoring conversation. I often say they don't get it until they get it. You can tell them and they can read about the process and techniques. However, until they experience being listened to without being judged or told what to do, until they actually see for themselves the amazing ability of people to find their own answers when given the space and support to do so, and feel the synergy that can occur when people are attuned to one another. And they may not have the wherewithal to be all of the mentor that they could be. So question number 12 is, how well have you trained and equipped your participants to succeed? So give yourself a rating, 0. We don't do any training. We haven't trained them. 1 is, yeah, well, we give them a book or we do some training. Or 2 is, yeah, we have trained both mentors, mentorees. They've got some ongoing support resources. Perhaps we even mentor the mentors. Okay, going to pause for questions once again. Can't see any coming in, but keep typing if you are. Okay, I'm going to move on fairly quickly and come back to questions. I want to get a rating. I want to run some polls in just a moment. We've actually kind of covered most of our points. Let me see. Need you to go back in a minute to number 5. So we're going to continue very quickly with the next. So we're going to kind of take a fast run at these last few. So number 13 is maintained two-way communication. So you've got a plan for ongoing communication, not only with your participants, but also with your stakeholders. So question number 13, give yourself a rating. Yes, we have a plan. That's a 2. No, we don't have a plan. We haven't thought about that. 1 is somewhere in between. 14, yeah, we do have a support program worthy of the name. We have provided resources and activities throughout the life of the program. That would be a 2. Or no, once we've put them together and trained them, that's pretty much it. Or 1, somewhere in between. Number 15, we have arranged networking opportunities, whether that's face-to-face networking events, as I know some of you have, or whether it's some kind of online get-together, or maybe you have an online community where people will be stimulated to kind of strike up conversations online with people other than the person that they're partnered with, that you've got an online community. So 0, 1 or 2 on that one. 16, we have ensured assistance is available. So you reach out to them and you establish a relationship with your participants such that you are confident they will reach out to you if they need assistance at any time. So if you're confident they're going to be able to reach out to you at any time, or your coordinators, you give that a 2. If you have set up nothing in terms of the ongoing relationship and rapport and trust and the mechanisms for this to happen, then sorry, that's a 0. If you're somewhere in between that, give it a 1 if you're not sure. Okay, number 17, you've got the follow-up, you're monitoring people, you're checking in with them, you've got touch points where you gather feedback, maybe you've got questionnaires, or maybe you've got some other activities where you gather their feedback on a regular basis. Great, that's a 2. If you haven't got anything like that, that's a 0, or if you're somewhere in between, that's a 1. So really quickly running through with 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17. And then we head for number 18. So evaluate and use your findings. So this is really important. As I said, we started looking at this. We got the criteria worked out and the plan worked out in that. So we knew what we were going to do in the planning phase. So you evaluate and you use those findings to improve outcomes. So you make refinements, you adjust your program each time you run it. So sorts of things you want to look at are program effectiveness. So you're evaluating the program itself. You also want to find out what people gained. So that might be fairly qualitative. And also, you might gather their suggestions for ways to improve, or you might bring the steering committee back together to look at what people are saying and to brainstorm and to plan what you might do. So number 18, it's not quite our last because we're going back to another one that we skipped deliberately earlier. So give yourself a rating on number 18. Is it 0? If you've run a program, you actually did evaluate it in a meaningful way and you used the findings to improve outcomes, or that's what you are going to do. So 0, 1 or 2 on number 18. I'll come back for your questions. Oh, did I miss one there? Missed a slide. There it is. So number 5 is the one we deliberately skipped. So go back on your list to number 5. I wanted you to wait until we'd looked at all of the other items on the list, so that you could be sure that you'd actually documented everything in your plan. So is it all there? All of these 18 things that we've talked about? If so, give yourself a 2. If you don't have a written plan, now one of the actions, and I'll ask you about actions, might be I'm going to go document my plan now. But if you haven't got a documented plan now, it's a 0. Okay, I understand some of you need to go because I'm sorry, we did start late, had a couple of technical problems at the beginning. If you can stick around, please do. If not, I understand. So give yourself a 0, a 2 or a 1 on this. And now I think I'm going to come back for your questions, but what I'm going to do is run a quick poll here. In fact, 2 polls. The first one allows you to look at your strengths. So you're going to look at what you've written down. Now, there are 6 items in the, there are 9 items under the planning heading. So you want to add up your score in items 1 to 6. What is your score? Sorry, there were 3. What am I saying? I'm getting flustered because I'm running out of time here and trying to be too quick. So add up your score for items 1, 2, and 3. Oh no, I've got this completely wrong. Okay, let me close that and go back to the slide I wanted to show you. Okay, so you get a score out of 12 for the items under planning mentoring. And we had items 1 to 6 here. So 1 to 6, what's your score for items 1 to 6? And you can have a total of 12. What is your score for those items under promoting mentoring? So there were 3 items there. So 7, 8, and 9 are going to be about promoting mentoring. So what did you get a score there for? Preparing people, then you've also got 3 items. And that'll be 10, 11, and 12. What was your score for 10, 11, 12? And then we've got 13 to 16. What was your score there? Okay. So this will tell you where your strengths and when the areas are that perhaps you need to work on. So let's launch the second poll. Mucked up the first one. So let's have a look at where the weaknesses in your mentoring strategy are. You can choose all 4. So if you got less than 6 for planning, you're going to choose that. If you've got 3 or less for promoting, tick that box too. If you've got 3 or less for preparing participants, choose that one. And program support, if that's 6 or less, choose that one as well. None of the above, that means you're doing really well. Okay, I'll just give you a couple of seconds for that to come in. Remember, this is anonymous. You've got your scores in front of you. Okay, most of you have actually voted here, so I'm going to close this and share. Okay, so how are we doing? Okay, so about a third have some work to do going back through the planning process. It looks like everyone's doing really well on promoting your mentoring program, so well done. And preparing, so the training, pretty good. And it's the program support where pretty much everyone needs to do some work on. So downloading the handout, the 4P handout, will give you some ideas about the work you need to do. Okay, so let me finish up that. Okay, so what were your strengths and what are your key takeaways, and importantly, your actions? So write these for yourself, and if you want to share them, that's great. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around and work with you if you have any more questions that you'd like to ask. And sorry, we've gone a little bit over time. I'm very interested in what your actions and key takeaways are from today's webinar. So just hanging around to see if there are any questions coming in. Any comments? Okay, not seeing any coming in at the moment. So thanks very much for joining me on the webinar today. This is our last one for the year, and we'll be back in a new year with brand new webinars. Okay, I have one action coming in. I'll keep these anonymous. I need more concrete networking strategy for the mentors. Okay, good action there. Okay, any more that you want to type in, I'll read them out, but keep them anonymous. Next year, lots of new webinars coming up, and I know that about half the people on these webinars actually are not in Australia. Many people are in Canada and the US, so I'm going to next year try running them at 2 different times. So I'm going to run them about this time of day for my Aussie mates. Most of you take a lunch break to kind of justify sitting in front of your screen. So I'll keep running them at this time, but I'm going to do an early session for people in Canada and US and other time zones that works better for. Hi, David. How you doing? Okay. Okay. So, David, if you want to let me know what handbook that was you were trying to download, I'll get a copy to you. So just give me a heads up what one it was, and I'll do my best to get that to you. Okay, I'm going to email everyone who registered for this webinar and send out the 2 handouts from today in case you didn't actually get them. And yeah, so just let me know which handbook that was you were wanting, David. Yeah, which mentoring handbook was it? Do you know the title? Was it Mentoring Demystified? Yeah. Okay, look, I'll send you a link to Mentoring Demystified and see if that was the one you were actually after. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, send me an email. That's great. Thanks, David. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up now. I'll stop the recording.